Okay, you are good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you and welcome to our special meeting held this January 11th, 2023. I'll just move to be it resolved, moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that the January 11th, 2023 special council meeting of the Township of South Glengarry now be opened at 4 p.m. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Moved by Sam McDonnell, seconded by Trevor Bougie. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the agenda as circulated. Any amendments? Okay, all those in favor? Any if opposed? Seeing none, carried. So now we'll move into the meeting. First, we have a delegation from Mr. Bercier, who is here with us. We'll get into that one. I do remind everybody to focus on the issue is the dog this evening, and not so much the other parties involved. So keep that in mind when presenting for personal information. Keep it at a minimum. And following that, Ms. Brunette will be speaking as well. And we have a few options afterwards. We can either make a decision tonight or we cannot make a decision tonight. If we want to make a decision, then we can hold the current dangerous dog label. We can amend it or we can reject it. So with that, Mr. Bercier, you can take the floor. You're just on mute, I believe. You're on mute. We cannot hear you presently. Bottom left corner of your screen.
Hello?
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Council, for letting me speak today. In regards to the dangerous dog and the dog being loose on the property, I wasn't aware that no dog in South Glengarry was allowed to be loose on his property. I understand if he roams or if he wanders off property, but there's no other townships with that bylaw, so it wasn't familiar with me. I was unaware. So with that said, the dog, when I usually leave the property, if I have to leave him at home, he's tied. He does have his dog house, water, food, and everything else. Next to the garage, I sent the photocopy the picture of the garage with the dog house. So if I leave the property and I can't bring the dog, he's usually tied, so he doesn't wander, he doesn't leave. But if I'm in the yard, if I'm doing yard work, if I just play with the dog, we're playing fetch, he is confined to the property with a wireless fencing device. I usually put the collar on because I can't leave the property with the collar, but I put the collar on. If he's playing around that way, he can't go on the neighbor's property or anywhere off the property. And with that said, I thought it was proper confinement and restriction because I don't want the dog to wander off and get hit, since I live right off County Road 34, and it is a high volume traffic area. So on the day of the question, there was a report of the dog biting somebody. But the initial report was, they told me, is that the dog was on the road and they were trying to coax the dog off the road back onto his property. Immediately, I knew there was no way the dog, he's been at that house for 6 years. There's never been any reports or any accidents or anything concerning the dog going on the property. He can't leave the property. So that's just my word. To prove that, I brought in evidence also. I went to all the neighbors and the neighboring businesses, and they all signed saying that the dog doesn't go on their property. They've never seen him on the road. And there's a business across the road that are familiar with the complainant. And they said, no, the dog doesn't road. All the employees signed. The only people that didn't sign was the people from the township of North Glengarry, because they figured it might be a conflict of interest. They didn't want to sign any paperwork. But they have cameras. I'm sure if there was video footage of anything, the dog going on their properties, it would have been mentioned before. Somebody would have said something. So I believe the dog is contained to the property because of the electronic fencing. He's never wandered off. He's never been anywhere else. But the statement from the person said that she had treats that she tried to lure the dog off the road. So when I talked to the bylaw officer, Ms. Brunette, on October 13th, she said there was no mention of any treats in her report. So I looked in, the police have numerous accounts of reports and statements that there were dog treats. That's not denied. She tried to lure the dog to her with dog treats. Now there's a lot of details in her statements that don't add up, don't make sense. One major thing is that if she was trying to bring the dog off the road onto the property, what then? What would restrict the dog? She never mentioned if she was going to try and tie the dog or if she was going to try and contact me or anything. I believe she was trying to take the dog off the property. She drove by, seen the dog roaming around the property loose, like he does if I'm outside. She didn't see me because I was on the north side of the house piling wood, and I have a good view of 3/4 of the frontage of my property in that area. If she stopped on the corner at the intersection where the ad bag and the community mailbox is, I don't pay attention because there's cars there constantly picking up ad bags, picking up mail, leaving that side street. So if she tried to lure the dog there, I wouldn't think nothing of it if the car was parked there. But everything from injuries or defense, everything makes me presume that she tried to grab the dog, and when she grabbed the dog turned in defense, either scared to defend himself, he bit her in the arm, or when she pulled him past the perimeter, if he's getting shot, he was trying to defend himself to go back on the property and he bit her on the arm. So all the injuries, everything else show signs of that when she grabbed the dog can't bite her in the hand if she has her hand on the collar. You had to bite her where in the arm, on the inside of the arm, that's the only access point he has. So like I said, with the idea that she never had a plan on what was she going to do with the dog afterwards, even if she leaves and the dog's back on the property, if he wandered off, he can still wander off. So there's no securement. She never mentioned anything as far as securement. So like I said, I believe she drove by, saw the dog there. If she has a habit of picking up dogs, she made statements that she knows me, she knows the dog, and she knows where I reside. So obviously the dog is near his residence. So if he wandered off once on the road, even if she says, okay, now he's back on the property and she leaves, nothing in her statement or in her story prevents the dog from leaving again. So that's why I assumed she tried to pick up the dog. Inconspicuous. If I would have pulled out and said, what are you doing to my dog? Oh, she's trying to save it. Off she goes. No harm done. And she can do it again later, or she can do it somewhere else. So I believe she tried to grab the dog. The dog defended himself, bit her in the arm. I've had, like I said, I even have signatures from the mailman that says he has no issues with the dog. He sees it tied. He's seen him running around the property if I'm there. Never had issues, never got attacked. The neighbors go get their mail. Strangers go get the ad bags on the property, on the corner of my property. There's never been issues with the dog attacking anybody. There was one previous incident in Alexandria at the Tim Hortons. The dog jumped up on somebody I know that popped up behind the truck as a surprise. We were all surprised. The dog was leashed at the time. We was standing in a circle of people socializing, and he jumped up. He did not bite the individual. I believe the reason why he reported the dog as a dog attack or a dog bite, it's not, I don't think there's any specifications for that. I don't believe it was mainly to get to the dog. It was just to get to me, trying to get under my skin to try and get me in trouble. But at the time I spoke to the police, they said, yes, it was a scratch on his side, probably from one of his claws. And they told me, well, just be compliant. There's no big charge. There's no severe investigation. Just be compliant, isolate the dog, get the dog vaccinated, et cetera, et cetera. So I did so at the time. And since then, I'm more eerie about where I leave the dog outside the truck. Like I said, at that time, he was on a leash. He wasn't roaming around. He didn't chase the person down. The person came in between two vehicles, popped out of nowhere, surprised the dog. I don't know why, but he jumped up on him. And the dog is a fairly sized dog, and this individual is fairly short. So when he jumped up with his paws, there's that thumb, I don't know the exact name of the claw, and it scratched him on the side. And that was, I don't know if there's any evidence, pictures or anything, but even the policeman said it didn't look like a bite. There was no, usually there's 2 marks for a bite as the squeeze or something. This was mostly a zigzag scratch, which looked like a claw scratch. So that being in the report from previous incident doesn't help me now, but I just wanted to clarify that. And like I said, since then, we don't have dog parks in the area. I don't take the dog parks. I usually take him with me in the truck, or I leave him at home. He's tied to his doghouse, or if it's bad weather, he's inside the house. But lately, because the dog, it can't go outside unless he's muzzled. And the only muzzle I could find that fits this dog is he's got a longer face, almost like a greyhound, is what they call a grooming muzzle. So that's temporarily, you can't leave the dog out like that for hours. So I can't leave him outside for muzzles. He's been confined to the house. I take him with me in the truck to get him out of the house, but he's basically taken the house, like he was house trained perfectly before. Now he believes that the basement is his backyard. So I'm picking up messes from the dog because he's referring to the house. So I'm not looking to change bylaws or ask for extra treatment. I was just trying to get the Dangerous Dog Act so I can tie the dog outside without having him muzzled. Because like I said, he can't pant, can't drink, can't do anything. So it's not humane for the dog to be muzzled. I can't get a proper muzzle that fits him so he can work in regular circumstances. But I don't have any problems with having him tied outside and everything. There was never any issues before. But now, because of this dangerous dog, I don't want to leave him outside with the muzzle. I can't. So that's basically what I'm asking today, is just to remove the dangerous dog, because I feel that the dog defended himself more than anything else. Other than the statements from the plaintiff that don't add up, I have no proof, but yet she doesn't have any proof either whatsoever from witnesses, video cameras, pictures, that the dog was on the road. And if the dog was on the road, it wouldn't be the first time in 6 years. For some reason, the moons lined up that he went on the road. It would have happened before. It would have been police reports, bylaw reports, or something that the dog's wandering on the road. There was never any such report. So I do admit that the perimeter I have, I did send a picture. It's not a very nice picture of the dog doing his business near the road, but I got no fence line, no stone fence. The property, I tend the property, I cut the lawn right up to the edge of the road. So the dog doesn't go past the actual ditch, but he does go close to the edge of the road. So if people get scared of that, that could be, but the dog doesn't understand 3 inches, a foot or something. So I made the perimeter so it goes to the edge of what they call the ditching, the end of my property. And that's where he usually goes to do his business. But like I said, he doesn't wander off the road. On the road, he did at one point when I first got him. He used to go to the neighbors because he had a cat, so he'd sniff around and go down the neighbors, and he's got to go around the cedar edge. So that's closer to the edge of the road. But since I got the perimeter, he hasn't never left the property unless he's in the truck or with me. So that's what I wanted to comment on and let the maid aware, and hope that you revise that and I can let the dog back outside without having to have him muzzled or get a little bit of fresh air.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Roussier. I guess now we'll move to Ms. Burnett if she has a follow-up to that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I'm just going to read over the information report of what this evening is allowing for and what the appeal allows for. And if council has any questions for me following that, I'd be willing to answer them. So the council this evening received the appeal under 4.11, which 4.6, which allows an appeal to happen under 4.11. So as we saw in the presentation for when we approved this bylaw, there's a level chart. Oops, you can't really see it because I'm being blurred all the time, but a chart of attacks that it roams from level 1 to level 6, 1 being the dog just chased someone and 6 being death. Following the investigation, we determined that a level 3 attack occurred based on the amount of puncture wounds as well as the depth of puncture wounds. Following that, we issued the dangerous dog order on and the event occurred on September 29th, 2022. Within a timely manner, Mr. Boursier applied for the appeal following a conversation when I was serving the dangerous dog order. And I informed him that he can appeal the order itself. He was indicating that there was going to be some struggles with having the dog muzzled and he would have to euthanize the dog. And I explained that euthanization is not in the purview of the municipality. We do not enforce euthanization based on our bylaw. Therefore, he had the opportunity to appeal the order within 7 days. And that is where we are right now.
Okay, thank you. And so just to make sure that we're all aware, the dangerous dog, I think you summarized it well in your report, was it needs to be muzzled off the owner's lot or muzzled on the lot if it's not contained by a fence or in a house. So that's, we can debate the whole thing or we can debate some of it, right? So I'm just going to lay out what we can talk about. Muzzled
That
off,
is correct.
muzzled off owner's lot and leashed by a person of over 18 years. No leash-free dog parks, required to provide rabies vaccinations, and then every renewal of that. There's warning signs, dog on property, required at the property in conspicuous places. And then when requested, we can provide as a township an update as to the residency of the dog and if the dog has passed away. So those are the items that are kind of currently on Mr. Boursier's dog. And we can uphold this in full, we can uphold it in part, or we can eliminate all of it. It seems, Mr. Boursier, from what you're saying, that your biggest issue of all those, is it 7, is that he's muzzled on your lot. Like that's the biggest issue to you, if there was one that you were to focus on. Is that correct?
Yes, I did read on the one report just last week that it said that remove it if I leave the property. I thought I had read it originally when Ms. Brunet sent me the paperwork, that it was at all times if he was outside. So yeah, I guess I could leave him outside, but like I said, I didn't want to risk it because I didn't know if I misread, or if they're misinformed. So I didn't want to risk it in case somebody reported a dog and then I'd be in bigger trouble after that. So
no, I don't
keep
think
him inside.
I don't think you misread that. And I think Ms. Burnett has a question or
through you,
clarification.
Mr. Mayor and Mr. Boursier. So what it's saying is if you have a fully enclosed kennel or fence or yard or something of the sorts, then your dog can be outside without a muzzle. But if you don't have that, then it's required to be tied up and muzzled.
Yeah, well, that's all I have is just a chain on the doghouse. I don't have a kennel or a pen or anything like that. So at that point, if I tie him outside, he'd have to be muzzled.
As it reads, yes, that's it. Okay.
I can't, I couldn't, I don't want to have the dog caged. If I put a pen, I basically keep the dog near the garage for, as a guard dog. Thieves don't, there's people that even if the dog was in a cage wouldn't bother with him. But there's some people, if they see a dog, they're afraid of the dog and they're afraid he might get loose. So the dog being on the chain, I've never had any problems with people stealing anything or entering the property or anything else. And if I put him on a leash with a muzzle, that might deter some people. But if I put him in a cage out back, a kennel or a pen in the back of the property, then anybody could steal anything off the front of the property. That's why I had the dog there. But like I said, and a dog, it doesn't matter what kind of dog. I had a border collie before. And there were people who were terrified because he'd bark. So people that are terrified of dogs, usually people that tend to steal or wander around people's properties, if they hear a dog, they don't go on the property. Being the dog in a fenced-in area, that'd be like having video cameras and not turning them on, just having a picture of it. It might work, it might not work. So I wanted to go back and just put the dog back on his chain where he was before without the muzzle. If he's I can't muzzle him all day long. And the way the property is set up, if I put any kind of pen, it would have to be in the backyard, in the back corner. And that's not feasible for me. It's not right. I don't think the dog should be in the pen in a confined area. How big can I make the pen? You can't fence in my whole yard as a schoolyard. I'd still have the entrance ways and everything else open. So I'd like the dog to go back to where he was, just on the chain without a muzzle. I understand if I take him somewhere, especially public, Yes, I've never really done that before. And if I take him somewhere, I don't take him to dog parks. I can take him in the truck with me. I can leave him in the truck. It's not a problem. And if I had to take him somewhere, I can put a muzzle at him at that time temporarily for half an hour. That's not a problem. I keep the muzzle in with me in the truck in case of that. If the truck gets into an accident or something, and I have to remove the dog, well, I have the muzzle with me at all times. But to have the dog, if I have to leave the dog at home all day, to build a fenced-in area and the cost and the idea of having the dog in the fenced-in area, I'd rather just get another dog. Because the dog itself, he's used to like playing ball. I used to play fetch on the front yard. He's got a big soccer ball. To confine him to that is penalize him again. He's already stuck in the house, and I can't. He doesn't speak for himself, but I can notice that it's different in the temperament. He's depressed. He's stuck in the house all the time. So I'd like to put him back out so he can live the way he did before. And if he's confined to the property, that's fine. If I can't go somewhere else, that's fine. But to be able to be on the property and bark and whatever he wants to do, drink, I'd like he did before.
Okay, I just for clarification, because you said something that struck me as slightly, like my understanding might be wrong. You said you'd be okay with him being chained, and that normally he is chained, but in this case, maybe we're not talking the same language. It seems like you have an electronic collar. In the case of this one, the dog was not chained, but he was on an electric collar, right? So
yeah, yes. If I was in the yard, if I was doing yard work, he has his collar on, so he's confined on the property. But if I left the property, like today, if I'm coming to a meeting, you can't bring the dog with me. He'd be either in the house or tied to his doghouse on the chain.
okay, so that's a unique thing. That's something that council may wish to discuss, is perhaps allowing it not with the leash, but chained without the muzzle, because that does provide not the full life that you had before. But given the events, I mean, I have a dog myself that isn't known to be the most friendly dog. He mostly lives inside or on a leash, so I can appreciate the care that you have for your dog, as well as the care you have for others in the lifestyle that way. So that is an option that we can amend it that way to have perhaps a chain, but not allow it off the chain when it's outside, unless it's in your presence. But that's something council can consider, and I'll now open the floor perhaps to council if I don't see any hands particularly raised up. I know this is we'll go to Councillor Jaworski first.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. So I was waiting for the offer to ask questions. Thank you, Mr. Boursier, for coming to council. I wanted to just double check 2 questions for yourself and then another question for Ms. Brunet. So just in terms of the past, I just wanted to be clear that the wireless fence that you have for your dog, that's been in place for some time, and it was in place prior to this issue in the fall, which reported the dog bite. Is that correct?
Yes, I've had the wireless fencing for, I believe, almost 5 years now.
Okay, thank you very much. And at the risk of repeating what Mayor McDonald has already said, what you're looking for at this point is to be able to tie the dog outside, but without muzzle. I just want to clarify that the chain that you have for the dog, is the dog clearly and definitively on your property as long as the dog is chained?
Yes. I brought in a picture just so you wouldn't think that I just got a doghouse. There is a doghouse on one of the pictures I brought in next to the garage, and I've had previous dogs that either broke snaps, broke collars. So this dog, being one of the biggest dogs I've owned in a long time, I found him a heavy duty collar. It's almost 2 inches wide, nylon. You can't break the collar. The chains, I've got all links and all the snaps. It's not stuff from the dollar store. So he shouldn't be getting loose. Everything's anchored to properly so he doesn't get loose. Because 17 years ago, I think I had a dog, a mid-sized dog, that always chased over to the neighbor's place because they had a female. And every time she'd get in heat, he broke chains, he broke collars, he dragged the doghouse halfway through the driveway one time, and eventually got run over. He got loose the one time. I believe at that time it was the eye bolt, whatever, near the doghouse that broke, and we found them on the side of the road. So to prevent that, I got everything anchored, and with time and experience, double up on this, make this bigger, make that bigger. So this dog being bigger, I got a heavier duty chain, good collar on him, and the doghouse is actually chained to the garage. He can't drag it around, so he's
Okay.
secured to the garage.
But in terms of the length of the chain, again, the dog is confined to staying on your property with respect, as long as
The length
he
The length
stays
is about
attached.
15 feet.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Boursier. If I could, Mayor McDonald, with your indulgence, could I ask a question to Ms. Brunei now, please?
Please do.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Ms. Brunei. Thank you for your information report. I just wanted to clarify my understanding. So two things. So if Mr. Boursier has, when he is present on his property, is the wireless collar sufficient for him when he's out with his dog? For him to be out, is that sufficient supervision for him to be out with his dog without a muzzle? That's my first question. And then my second question is Mr. Bourcier's stated request of the only modification he's looking for is being able to leave the dog tied, but without a muzzle. I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts or insights, opinions on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jaworski, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I can only comment on what the provisions of my bylaws say. And with the experience that I have in the field, having the wireless fence was a great innovation. However, a dog can pass the fence and then may not return because it's afraid of the injury or the pain. So there's always the risk of that with wireless fencing. With him being present on the property and supervising the dog actively, then in my opinion, I wouldn't think there would be much of a concern if there was an active supervision. In this scenario, there was no active supervision. In regards to the chain and the muzzle, it comes back down to anyone is allowed to enter your property onto your driveway up to your door. That is through the Trespass of Property Act. It's not trespassing if you go up to the door on your property. When I was at the property, the doghouse chain, the dog was not outside, but the doghouse and chain would be able to reach that area unless it's been moved or if the chain's been reduced. So that would be a concern I have if he's not actively supervising the dog or at the property and the dog's not muzzled and on a chain outside without supervision. Now, being the breed of the dog, there's no neglect concerns here because it can be outside in the winter or whenever. Mm-hmm. But in this scenario of security or safety, those would be my concerns.
Thank you.
Okay. Can I add something?
Go ahead, Mr. Boursier.
In the picture, in the photos that I brought, I don't know, the lady at the counter made photocopies there because she said it wasn't clear. On page 12, there's a picture of the corner of the garage and a trailer next to it. And you can see from the lawn where the wear mark is from the chain and where the path from the dog where he runs and wears out the property. And that nowhere comes close. Yes, that picture. See where the darker soil is. You can actually see the chain almost right to the end. It's still 10 feet from the driveway and still about 30 feet from the house door. So it'll go on the driveway in front of the garage, but it can't reach the driveway or the door. So if somebody would just come and sell cookies for Girl Scouts, they can drive through the driveway and come up to the door without the dog being close. So the chain goes, if you see it on the right-hand side where the ditch goes in, it goes right to the edge of that ditch. So the chain, like I said, you can see from the chain, it's tied near the bottom of the doghouse and it's extended on the side, on the driveway. It's almost at the end. There's only about a foot that you can't see from the picture. So like I said, from the doghouse, I'd say it's 15, maybe 16 feet roughly. But it doesn't go anywhere near the driveway. It's still a good 10 feet from the driveway. But it'll go up to the front of the garage. If somebody goes to the garage, it will go to the garage door. but it won't cross the driveway, it won't come close to the driveway, and it doesn't come anywhere close to the house door.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes a picture kind of gives some of that description, and it's nice to have that conversation with the picture in front of us. Is there any other further comments or thoughts from other members of council? Deputy Mayor Lang, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I'm just gonna try to figure out what you would like. Are you looking for a recommendation? I would like to see us, if we're going to make a decision, I personally would like to make it tonight. I don't see any point in drawing this out to another meeting. Are you looking for a recommendation or a motion and my personal thoughts are, as long as Miss Brunet was to inspect the chain and the collar and she was happy with the strength of it and how it was secured, and not that we don't trust you, Mr. Boucher, but I think that just would be in due diligence on our part. I would be okay with the dog as long as he was tied, that he didn't have to wear the muzzle, but when he wasn't tied, he would put the muzzle on. And I guess if you're worried that somebody might walk to the front of the garage, you could always put a sign on the garage that says "Beware of dog" or something. But he would have to be, if he didn't have his muzzle in the yard, he would have to be tied. That's what I would put forward.
I did put a sign on the garage because I do mobile tire service, so there's sometimes delivery guys that come by, and the dog does creep in. It's a sliding door for the garage. He goes in because it's cooler in the garage in the summertime, and he did come out and surprise delivery guys, and they got scared from the dog. They didn't attack anybody, but they didn't know he was there. So I did put a sign to warn if there's any deliveries that there's a dog there. Whether he's there at the time or not, but they do see the sign, so they usually just drop the parcels near the door of the house.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm just going to echo Deputy Mayor's comment that I would like also to have a decision this evening. I think there's no point in hanging it up and having administration go over it for another meeting. I saw Ms. Burnett's hand up as well as Councillor McInnell, so we'll go in that order. Ms. Burnett and then Councillor McInnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to clarify that if we're only changing the muzzle, the signage on the property does have to be conspicuous and has to be clear, whether at the front door, garage door, and everything. So it doesn't negate that that requirement of the order.
Okay, great. Councillor McInnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just looking at it on actually Google Street View. So actually, it looks like the sign was up in August, anyways, on the garage door. But I guess two things. I'm looking at it from Street View, and I mean from where the doghouse is. I mean, yes, there's a secondary entranceway to that property, but the primary entrance is off of 34, and that. It's, in my opinion, if that little second entranceway wasn't there, it wouldn't even be a conversation that he's near the laneway. But my personal thoughts are in line with Councillor Lang. If the dog's outside and he's on the leash, chained up, and it meets kind of the criteria that Miss Brunet feels is acceptable, I have no issue with the dog being unmuzzled. And even if he's on the myself, I don't know what the rest of council thinks. If you're actively playing with them, I mean, it's pretty hard to play fetch on a 15-foot chain. I mean, if you're playing in the front yard with them or in the backyard, or I wouldn't have any issue with him being unmuzzled if he's wearing the electric fence collar or what. But I don't know what the rest of council's thoughts are. Maybe baby steps, and you come back and review that in a year or something. But anyways, my thoughts are definitely in line with Councillor Lang's, and I'm not opposed to going even a step further if he's got his collar on or whatnot. Even if it's maybe a remote collar as well, that you put the two of them on, that you can control them that way if you're playing fetch with them. But I don't know. My personal thoughts are as much as that anyways right now. So.
All right, thank you. So I'll just take a quick straw poll before moving to Councillor Bougie. I saw your hand up. It seems like presently we have two members of council that say as long as the chain is robust and the length is not too long, that chaining the dog without a muzzle is acceptable. That would be one amendment we'd be looking at. That's pretty okay. So that's good. So then I guess the only thing to really discuss would be, I think there's not really, you didn't have any concerns, Mr. Boursier, with the rest of them. I mean, they're not all great, but like that was the one that you really wanted taken care of, is so you can have your dog outside and have him kind of have that freedom of life. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. So we'll move to Councillor Bougie, and then we will also discuss then on Councillor McInell if we wish to, when the owner is on the property, remove, if not on the chain, can he, if owner's on property, can he be not muzzled? Councillor Bougie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would concur with Councillor McDonnell and Deputy Mayor Lang. I like the idea that the wireless fencing is there as a backup if anything was to happen, if he was off the chain. And as long as he's supervised, I think wanting to play with your dog, if he's supervised, I think that's fine to have the muzzle off. But if not, he's not supervised, I think he should be chained with the muzzle. And I think that would be sufficient in my eyes if Ms. Brunet is okay with that as well, and the equipment is up to par.
Okay, so that seems that there's two individuals of council, or two members of council, I should say, leaning in that direction. I would the only hesitation is I have my canine friend, and I know it's making it a little personal, is playing is an active role. It's not, it's not cutting a tree in the back and saying you're playing with him. At that point, we should be pretty clear that like if it's not playing, he's tied up, and it's active. It's not just letting him roam while you're doing chores. It is, kicking a ball. And I don't know if we need to be that specific. It's just like a dog can find a way quickly out of the yard. They can be fast when they catch somebody. Depending and despite how lovely they mostly are. So I'll leave it to, it seems Councillor McDonnell and Councillor Bougie are of the same opinion. Does Deputy Mayor Lang or Councillor Jaworski have thoughts towards that? Leaning either way hard, because if we have three of us, then we can go to Ms. Brunet and see if we can just amend it as we wish and then carry on. So Councillor Jaworski, go ahead, please.
I don't have an issue with the dog being chained without a muzzle, as long as what's already been said, that we're satisfied that it's an appropriate chain and it's appropriately located so that someone going to the front door is not potentially could interact with the dog. Put it that way. When it comes to not having the muzzle on, I think I like the language that Ms. Brunet used, which was being actively supervised. So there's lots of different ways to actively supervise your dog that don't necessarily involve throwing a ball or kicking a ball. Your dog can also be sitting beside you. Yeah. So I think in the end, it's Mr. Boursier needs to take responsibility for how he's going to supervise his dog, but it needs to be active supervision. Thank you.
Yes, and that's a great clarification, because I was a little too specific with my example, but I do agree completely with your description of active, right? Like a dog can actively sit beside you and you can actively, it's the supervision portion of it. So in that case, it seems we have, unless Deputy Mayor Lang has any strong opinions against it, some consensus here that the muzzle can come off as long as he is chained. That's like the change one. And the second one is if there's active supervision, the muzzle can come off, and then otherwise it seems the rest of it is holding unless we want to discuss that. And just to keep everybody up to date with that, so I'll just look at my screen here.
I was just going to say point of clarification. I believe that Ms. Brunet already clarified that active supervision does not require a muzzle, and so there would not be a change. But maybe I'm the one who is confused. Thanks.
Ms. Brunet, do you mind just making sure that we're speaking the same language?
So this is up to your decision or discretion. Active supervision, if you're playing is when if this were up to specifically bylaw related and whatnot, I would say that the muzzle is not needed while playing, but if it's just sitting down outside or something along the lines, or roaming the property and he's looking at the dog, but he's also not in a distance where he can like control the animal, the dog, then a muzzle would still be required. mind you, both of those options are on the table to discuss right now. There's also an option of having just, a 50-foot leash available on the dog at all times. So even if he's not right beside it, but still actively watching and not wearing a muzzle, he can grab that leash if the dog starts to run towards the road or something along those lines. Food for thought. Sorry, Council.
Deputy Mayor Lang.
I guess I'm a little hesitant on the active supervision. And not that I think there'd be anything wrong if it was active supervision, but I know the way I am and I know the way most people's lives are, there's so much going on. It's how do you keep that, up day after day, and like you're out playing with the dog and the next thing you know, the kids run out and then they ask you a question or somebody stops on the side of the road and say, how you doing? You're chatting with them. It's tough to do all the time and not to lapse on it. So I'm a little hesitant on that one. I'm perfectly fine with the other one, but I will go along with whatever the majority decides here tonight.
Okay, so then the majority seemed to be okay with the active supervision at that time, with Ms. Brunette's comment about perhaps like a 50-foot leash when actively supervised, that allows a dog to be unmuzzled, and then also the kind of that's fail safe, because Deputy Mayor Lang does have a point that we're not 100% active is impossible and not to be expected, and two, from my point was that the dogs can kind of take off quickly when they decide to see something. So is there any more discussion on that, or does the balance of council wish to pass it as previous to Ms. Brunette's comment that as long as it's actively supervised, no muzzle, and then whenever not actively supervised, that chain of a robust nature of an appropriate length? I'll just leave it open, and maybe there's no more discussion, and just call a vote or give direction to do that. Councillor Jaworski.
Just to clarify, it's actively supervised on his own property.
On his own property, yes. Okay, seeing that, I believe that the clerk, Ms. Campo, did have some resolutions available to us. So we are moving to amend it, and the amendments are actively supervised on their own property, or Mr. Bouchier's own property, can be without a muzzle, and then additionally unsupervised on a chain with robust form and length, unattended on his own property. Mr. Bouchier, do those, did you have any more, I don't want to say pleading, but any more thoughts or that kind of?
Well, if I did take him out somewhere, I have a sister that has a property on County Road 43. And if I take him out in public, I usually have a collar with remote. I got two collars, the one for the property perimeter, and I do have a collar with remote that I can control. So I can put that on when he's being supervised too as extra. But no, that's basically it's just to have the dog at home, being able to play outside. Like I said, supervised. That's usually the case anyways. When I'm outside, I'm in around. But in the incident, yes, I couldn't see him on the south side of the property. I admit that. So I'll just be more vigilant, more careful, and if I let him play, it'll be to play, or if I'm walking around the property on a leash or with the remotes, and make sure he's supervised at all times and within my reach and my control. And if not, I have no problem just tying him up like he did before. If I'm gone for half a day or a day, he can be tied like he used to be next to the garage.
Excellent, and you are fully aware that the other items off your property maintain as they were directed previously? Like that's
Yes.
clear to you? Okay, great. All right, then if we can get the clerk back on to read the resolution, and if there's time to amend it, we can take a moment. If it's not ready, wait a moment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you'll bear with me a moment, I'm just kind of tweaking the resolutions I had prepared based on the direction of council tonight. So if you just give me a minute, I'll finalize that. I'll read it. And if all is good, you can call for mover and seconder and a vote.
Okay, great. Well, then I will, we'll wait for that. In the interim, Mr. Bouchier, I apologize if I've said your name in two different ways. I'm not the greatest with the CIERs, and I was curious, what is the dog's name? Just to get to know you a little bit.
Toby.
Toby. Okay, I do. That was actually in the report somewhere, I think so. Yeah, big fella. I have myself a a little Sharpei. His name's Teo, and they can be dear to you. That wasn't a fire call, Deputy Mayor Lang?
Oh, I work in noisy areas. I got that phone. That's the ringtones. I can hear it over the noise. It makes a few people jump.
But it made me look at my phone just to make sure it wasn't a fire call.
Mr. Mayor, just through you, I guess, while we've got Ms. Brunet here.
Yes.
What is the lifespan of, say, a dangerous dog order? For example, Mr. Bercier in 5 years able to appeal it and say, the dog is now, 10 years old and he's not doing too much moving and running around. Can he be deemed safe again, or et cetera, things like such as that? Just, I guess, give us all a little background.
Yep, so through you, Mr. Mayor, there is 2 sections to the appeal. The first one is appeal within 7 days of being issued. The second one, I'll just read it verbatim so that I'm not making up anything. After a minimum of 2 years since the last reported attack and the owner submits a sufficient proof of successful completion of obedience, behavioral, or any similar training by a qualified person, and a letter from a qualified dog trainer saying that the dog is not likely to attack again, he can come in 2 years' time and request the entire dangerous dog order be revoked or other parts of it.
Perfect. Just was wondering that way. So you could realistically take some doggy day care courses or whatnot to be revoked.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, that's good to know for you, Mr. Bercier. Great question, Councillor McDonnell. Ms. Campo, are you available to read that? And do I call for a mover or seconder in this instance, or do you?
Well, I'll read what I've drafted first, just to make sure that I've captured what it is that council would like to move forward with. And if you want to make any revisions, just let me know. Otherwise, you can call for the mover and seconder and call for the vote. So, what I've drafted here says, be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry hereby amend Dangerous Dog Order 22-121 pursuant to Section 411 of the Animal Control Bylaw, whereby when outdoors, when the dog is on the owner's lot, a muzzle shall not be required when the dog is being actively supervised, or if the subject dog is restrained by a leash deemed to be sufficient by the township's manager of municipal law enforcement.
I think from my view that covers it, but Councillor McDonnell.
Meets what I figured we were going for. I'd move to approve as presented, Ms. Campo, or as amended.
Okay, perfect. Got a thumbs up from Councillor Jaworski. So I guess the mover in this case would be Councillor McDonnell. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Jaworski. And if you could read, do we need to read the resolution again? I guess we just heard it, so we'll go right to the vote. All those in favor? Any if opposed? Seeing none, carried. So it will be amended as you heard there, Mr. Bercier. And I guess then I will move to end the meeting. So then I imagine, sorry, I should, just before I close the meeting, Ms. Brunette, will you be in contact with Mr. Bercier? Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. So then you'll hear, but you have your the direction from us. I will probably be sent an official format at a later moment. So I'll moved by Trevor Bougie, seconded by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry adjourn to the call of the chair at 4:49 p.m. All those in favor? Any if opposed? Seeing none? That's great. All right. Have a good evening, everyone.